Hey guys, it's Sorry. Today we're taking a real look at Back 4 Blood. We're answering the real question nobody's asking anymore. Is it worth playing in 2026? Let's get into the video. Back 4 Blood was released with a lot of expectations. It came from the studio that helped to create Left 4 Dead, and for a lot of people, that meant only one thing. This was supposed to be the next evolution of a classic. But years later, and with most of the player base gone, the question in 2026 isn't what Back 4 Blood wanted to be, it's whether it's actually worth playing now. Especially if you're coming from Left 4 Dead. The first thing everyone talks about with Back 4 Blood is the card system, and honestly, it doesn't need a long explanation. Cards are just modifiers, small buffs, stat changes, or playstyle tweaks that stack over a run. The problem isn't that the system exists, it's where it actually matters. On lower difficulties like Recruit, the card system just feels pointless. The game is so easy that you don't need to build synergy, positioning, or planning. There aren't enough hordes, the pressure is low, and the runs feel close to empty and soulless. Recruit doesn't teach you how Back 4 Blood actually wants to be played. It just dulls the experience. Where the card system does make sense is on higher difficulties like Veteran or No Hope. That's where builds, stamina, economy, and damage mitigation actually come into play. In theory, this is where Back 4 Blood separates itself from Left 4 Dead. But in practice, that depth only exists once you push past the casual experience, which means most players never really feel it. And that's where I come in. And that's why my perspective matters, because I've always played Back 4 Blood solo. Back 4 Blood feels like a game that expects coordination, but doesn't support solo players particularly well. The bots are serviceable, but they don't adapt the way the AI director did in Left 4 Dead. In Left 4 Dead, solo play still felt dynamic. The game reacted to you. In Back 4 Blood, solo runs feel more rigid. Difficulty doesn't escalate organically, it just scales numbers. That makes higher difficulties feel less like tension and more like endurance. One of the biggest surprises going back to Back 4 Blood in 2026 is how unfinished the presentation feels. The home screen is just bare bones. Online and offline options feel awkwardly split. It doesn't feel cohesive or inviting at all, especially to a new audience or new players. Yeah, the camp is a cool idea, but it's unnecessary. It exists, but it doesn't add atmosphere. It doesn't build identity, it just exists. It's there. Compare that to Left 4 Dead, where menus were simple but purposeful. You weren't distracted, you were pushed straight into the experience. Back 4 Blood's interface feels like a modern live service framework without the soul to justify it. And visually, Back 4 Blood is sharper than Left 4 Dead. There's better lighting, better textures, more detail. But despite that, the maps blur together. There's almost like a sameness to Back 4 Blood's environments. Similar lighting rules, similar tones, similar pacing. Left 4 Dead didn't rely on fidelity, it relied on contrast. Dead Center, Dark Carnival, Swamp Fever. I mean, all those campaigns had distinct identities. You remembered where you were. In Back 4 Blood, you remember the mechanics more than you remember the places. It feels like a modern remake of a formula, not a reinterpretation. The biggest issue with Back 4 Blood isn't the cards. It's not the bots either, or even the maps. It's the intent. Left 4 Dead 2 was built to be finished. No progression systems, no seasonal content, no constant tuning. It shipped and it was done. Back 4 Blood feels like a game that never decided what it wanted to be. It's trying to recreate something that Turtle Rock no longer owned. and in doing so it lost the simplicity that made the original special. Instead of refining the formula, it rebuilt it from memory, and that's why it feels familiar, but not satisfying. Is Back 4 Blood still worth playing in 2026? If you're coming from Left 4 Dead and expecting the same magic, no. It won't replace that experience. If you're looking for a structured, system-driven co-op shooter with built variety on higher difficulties, then there's something here. But for solo players, casual runs, or people chasing that classic co-op tension, Back 4 Blood never quite gets there. I mean, it's not a terrible game. It's just a reminder that some games didn't need to be rebuilt. That's Back 4 Blood 2026, from the perspective of someone who lived in Left 4 Dead. Appreciate you watching. I'm sorry, and I'm out. Peace.